Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy. Welcome to my rear end. Yes, this is the rear undercarriage of my 1979 Ford Fairmont. It's also a Fox body, so everything you see in this video and here also applies to Mustangs from 79 to 92 and actually a bit beyond that as well. In this video, I'm going to cover the installation of a rear stabilizer bar from Maximum Motorsports. Now, originally this car didn't have a rear stabilizer bar. In fact, the differential back here looked very different. But I upgraded it and I had a different set of suspension components in here previously. Now, I had a stabilizer bar that connected to two lower control arms and that worked okay, but this one from Maximum Motorsports actually has body attachments, and that's going to allow it to be much more effective at its job of keeping the back end of this car from rolling when I go around corners. Not only is it trick because it actually attaches to the body, but it's also adjustable. There are 4 different positions that you can put the end links in to go from a softer setting all the way to a stiffer setting, depending upon how much body roll you're trying to control in the rear of the vehicle. To install this rear stabilizer bar, you're going to need a welder. So if you don't have a welder or you don't have the skills to install it, you're going to need to figure that out before you get this up in there. And before you say anything about my welds, they get better before the end of this video. Step 1 is going to be to measure the ride height. In order to do that accurately, you want to calculate the weight of yourself in the driver's seat. So either weigh yourself and add an equal amount of ballast to the driver's seat, or you sit in the driver's seat while you have a friend do the measurements for you. Another thing to be considered is the weight of the fuel in your vehicle. Gasoline weighs a little over 6 pounds a gallon, so if you know the capacity of your fuel tank, you can take that and divide it in half and also add ballast in the back of the vehicle to get an even more accurate measurement of ride height. Next, you want to remove the rear coil springs. And you're doing this so that at some point during this installation, you can check the full travel of the suspension from all the way up to all the way down. This is a lot easier to do without the coil springs in place. I'll put a link in the description to a video I did about the rear control arm installation I did on this vehicle. And in that, I show how to install and remove the coil springs. Assembly starts on the bench. So take it away, Eric without a hat. It comes with everything you see here. It starts with our bar. Gets one of the supplied metal sleeves on both sides. Then it gets bushings. Now, it comes with supplied grease, but do not put the supplied grease in just yet. We're going to do that as our final answer. You don't need this bracket just yet. You slide those on there like that. Minus bracket will make it go on that much easier. Right now we're just getting things mocked up. This is split, so we can pull this off later, grease the inside of it. I should have also stated that these bars come in different sizes and some of them are solid, so you need to be sure to pick the one for your application. Now, I was involved directly with one of the engineers at Maximum Motorsports, knows exactly what my car is, exactly what I'm trying to do, and this is the one that they supplied me with. So there are different sizes available, so be aware of that. But everything else in this installation is pretty much going to go the same. Next step, we are going to fasten the bar to the brackets. Now the brackets, as you see, have a certain orientation, so make sure you get 2 of them the same, lined up the same. And when you place these on here, make sure this bushing's, they say, about 1/2 to 1 inch away from the splines. Now with that, 2 of the supplied grade 8 washers, yeah, something took a bite out of that. And then the 3/8 nylon nuts. Don't believe we have to tighten these for final assembly just yet. We might just need to snug them down. These are 14 millimeter. I'm just going to run them down until they're snug, so it's not necessarily to torque them at this time. We're just snugging them up. Now we got to take the splined arms and install them. All right, so it's super important that these get on here the same, just like I did here. Next, I'm going to install the pinch bolts, which already had their own washers installed on them. And then there's going to be another washer on this one. Don't tighten this yet. The orientation should be like this. I'm sure you've noticed that these are offset. This being the front of the car, you want them to look like this if you're placing them under the car. So these need to be angled back a little bit, just like the instructions. These are the installation plates. They needed to be bolted onto the outside of the arms in these center tool holes. Use the 1-inch bolts and the AN washers. This doesn't really need to be tight. It just needs to be snug. I'll take a close look at the brackets. They're different from side to side. They're supposed to be marked, but I don't see anything marked on here. In the instructions, the bracket's different. It has holes, whereas mine doesn't have any holes, and it looks like it goes on both sides of the frame rail, but it threads in from the back side here. So the only bracket that I can use to thread it in the way they have it there, if you look, is going to be this bracket, because if not, these are going to be sticking out. I'm just going to go by that, pretend like I'm making Legos, go into that second hole with another one of the 1-inch 3/8 bolts with the AM washer, and run it down snug so that it can still pivot a bit, like that. Now I realize I just showed you putting the entire assembly together on the bench. That's not really the way you want to go, because when you go to try to mount it up to the axle tubes, it's kind of all over the place and really difficult to do. Also, I had some trouble with the U-bolts. They were a little bit too wide, so I had to stick them into my vise and squeeze them down so they would actually fit through the holes in the brackets. Once I did that, I mounted the brackets to the axle tubes, and then I came in with the stabilized bar assembly and mounted that. It was much easier doing it that way than the way they said in the instructions. I'm going to say my way was easier. All right, now I kind of should have done this a little bit sooner, but I'm going to jack everything up to get that at ride height. The coil springs have already been removed, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So now I'm going to put everything to ride height as if I was sitting in the vehicle. As long as you do this before you start checking where everything goes, you're good. But you want to set everything up as if the car is sitting level with you in it. There we are. And they say that this bar should be about 1 inch above the bottom of the differential. I can't go too far because I'm going to come in contact with my panhard bar. I have to be mindful of that. But with this, we're going to try to position these guys up on the frame rails, get an idea where they go so we can tighten the stuff down. I don't know if I'm agreeing with the 1 inch up above the back here, because at least on mine, I'm just not seeing that. There also may be some exhaust work and some fuel lines that you need to work around. Slowly working this into place. Because mine is sitting right on the bottom of this differential. And the differential that they show in the instructions is actually steel instead of aluminum like mine is. So I've been messing around off camera a little bit about trying to get this in a position. We're at the point in the instructions where they want you to just sort of loosely bolt these down, these brackets, so that we can get this part of the position correct. And for me, my concern is up here between the back of the differential cover and this bar. I don't want these two things to make contact, so I want to be sure that, well, it'd be great if I could make it so I could continue to keep my finger in between here. That would be awesome, because we don't want these to come into contact. And the other thing is, when this is all said and done, because right now we've got everything positioned at ride height, this bar should be about straight across like that, and this should be as straight across as it can be. This is what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to position these brackets in such a way to where you can weld them in the same location on both sides, have them even, but also have them so when it's at ride height, that it's all at this neutral position, somewhere in between. The instructions state to place a floor jack underneath the ends of these up towards the front. They explicitly state they don't want you placing it back here because that's going to change the position of the U-bolts and that bracket. What you want to do is get these positioned on both sides in such a way to where this is flush up against the subframe. And I just need to make contact. You might need to tap it with a hammer, but that's about where you're looking to land. Now that things are roughly in position, I'm going to snug the U-bolts up enough to where this stays mounted to the axle housing. When you tighten the U-bolts, you want to make sure you do it evenly on each side. And while you're in the process, throw your ratchet on the floor. It'll make you feel awesome. And since I'm just trying to position these, I'm just going to tighten one of the U-bolt brackets. This is not like final assembly. Like Bob Ross would say, that's a happy place, I think. I'm gonna try to do the same thing over here. This pan hard bar is in the way that way. I believe I have everything in position. I'm gonna mark it, and then I'm going to clean it and then weld. But this is what I've got. These brackets are coming into contact right up in this area. Just maybe about a ½ inch or so right underneath there. This is a fuel line here. Be very careful with it. In fact, I'm gonna unbolt it from the side here. I'm likely not even gonna use this fuel line, but the point being is that there may be a fuel line here, and if you're gonna be welding, you wanna get this fuel line as far away as possible. That side looks even with this side as far as where the upper control arm brackets used to live. So they look about in the same position. Also, we have that straight across part with the bar. So in our quote unquote neutral position, and we barely clear my differential cover, and I mean barely. The drain is gonna be a little difficult to get to, and I may drop the bar in order to get to it. So it's not the end of the world, but certainly something to be considered. I'm gonna mark it, clean it, weld it. You can take a hammer, it says, and tap this like flush up against here, because not quite there, but I don't have to clean exactly in these areas. I'm obviously going to clean around these areas, but it's nice to know where I'm going to be welding. Now I'll make space for our cleaning. And I can just rotate that down out of the way. I'm going to move this fuel line out of the way before I start grinding away. Yeah, I haven't decided on my fuel system yet. Having to redo this rear suspension has changed my plans in that regard. And experience has taught me that safety glasses are often inadequate when it comes to using my grinder. Face shield it is. I think I got a little more to do. Be fine there, but I also noticed that there's this burr sticking up from a plug weld. I'm just gonna grind that down. I can be happy with that. I know I'm not wearing my safety glasses, but I'm just positioning this back under the torque arm so I can lift this up to ride height, so I can get everything into position so I can weld it. Everything's all clean now. I also had a little trouble up in here with this bar coming super close to this differential cover. I positioned it, and then I came in with my angle gauge just for the heck of it and stuck this on the back of both sides of these brackets. I don't know if this might be helpful to you, but I was at about 54 degrees on that side. I just wanted to make sure I got my angle correct so that they were even on both sides. And then also roughly the same amount on that side. So it's now maybe ½ a degree off from one side to the other, and I'm not going to be too concerned about that, but that may be helpful to you. And by the way, this has like a little ridge on the inside here that I was placing against this. So now the intention is to lift it up to ride height so I can put it into position so I can weld it. Since there's no springs in here to hold it in position, just been using that. I've been wrestling with this thing off camera for a little bit now, and I'm having a lot of difficulty getting this left side mounted up to, or mated up to the frame so that it seems reasonable. I measured where the axle tube was in relation to the body, and I was thinking maybe it was off like this a little bit. In fact, I did a little adjustment on the torque arm to try to get it in a little bit more, because it looked to be off about ½ inch from one side to the other, and I was scratching my head going, how can that car be that far off? And then I realized something, which is up in here. So over on this right side, you can see where this is the upper control arm mounting bracket that was welded onto the subframe here. And you can see how nicely it's mated up with the new stabilizer link connection, which is great. This side over here is perfect. This side will weld up just fine. I figured out my problem is actually where this side, the control arm, was welded up. As you can see, there's a massive gap here, and it in turn creates a massive gap there. So it's very difficult to get this to line up because, well, the car isn't straight. So I really have to work to get this one in position. Because these links are adjustable, which I'm very grateful for, I'm going to take full advantage of that from one side to the other. But it has created a lot of difficulty. And as I said, I thought, okay, well, there must be a problem with the axle. And it's not the axle. It's basically this mount right here and this huge gap as compared to what's over here, which is none. Welcome to 1970s American car manufacturing. Such a shame because this side is so perfect. I've put a support underneath the bar towards the front to hold this up tight against the frame. I snugged up all the fasteners so that this would pretty much stay in place. My thought is I will tack weld this and this into place for now, and then go over to the other side and get the other side tacked in and then do my welding from there. All right, tack it into place. This side is tacked into place. Okay, I've come in and done the same thing on the opposite side. Got the support underneath the arm in an effort to attach it to the body. Everything's at ride height. I just went back and made sure everything was level. This is, as the movie goes, as good as it gets. Good thing that the links are adjustable and that they pivot from side to side. So they do allow for some adjustment, let's call it. But while everything's level and in place, I'm just gonna weld it. With everything tacked into place, I'm going to drop the stabilizer bar down and out of the way so I can get in there and weld better and just do what I can to weld it up. As far as that side goes, I'm just gonna do my best and try to fill in the gaps wherever possible, because it seems like that's really my only option. Suddenly I woke up this morning and I decided to be a welder. I just thought of an idea. Whole lot easier. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. I don't need this jack in here right now either. I need room to weld right now. I smell delicious. It might be all I have to do. To give this some more support, I'm gonna come in underneath and just weld that L part there. That huge gap that's up there, I'm sure you've noticed it. I did point it out to you. I'm gonna fill that in also. I'm here, welder's on. Okay, while the welds are cooling, the fan is on, the door is open, we're getting some of these welding fumes out of here. I'm gonna remove these brackets so I can paint them. I'm gonna paint them black. I'm waiting for these to cool, as I said, and once these cool down, I'm gonna paint all of this black also, and all the exposed metal and everything that I just made, I'm gonna paint that black. I'm not gonna paint these collars or anything, or the U-bolts or any of that stuff. I just wanna make these brackets black. Just give them a coat of paint, and also so it matches everything that's under here. I'm not so concerned about the pan hard bar, that's aluminum. I don't have to worry about corrosion on that in the same way I do this other stuff. These are painted. I painted up under there. If I'm honest, wiping it down with like a rag with some brake clean or something like that first and then priming it probably would have given me a better finish. But I'm really just concerned about keeping rust off on this car. It's not a show car, so I want function, not so concerned about form, so relax. Put everything back together for real this time. If you're wondering what I painted it with, same stuff I painted the axle with. I'll link it in the description. I'm going to be installing the sway bar for the last time, and what they recommend you do is that now you add the grease, and then when all is said and done, they say about 3/4 of an inch between the edge of the bushing and these splines. So here we go with that. All right, I'm going to position everything the way it was before I started welding, so I can get the U-brackets where I want them. Also going to put these lower control arms up. I want to get these back in the same position that they were in. I'm going to position everything back to ride height, which is where I took all my measurements and set everything up. It's in the same position it was before I welded stuff. It's level. And I'm going to run all these down snug, and then I'm going to come back and torque them to 33 foot-pounds. There is also a specified torque on these pinch bolts up in here that varies depending upon the stabilizer bar that you're using. We'll get to that in a minute. I believe these are also 33 foot-pounds, but at this point, everything's going to get run down for reals. I'm going to run these down with my impact, but I will torque them down to 33 foot-pounds after the fact. "33 foot-pounds. Finally. Just nervous about torque wrenches these days. I'm going to snug up the U-bolts. Remember to do these a little bit at a time and try to do them as evenly as possible. Now I will take these to their final torque of 33 foot-pounds. Once again, working my way back and forth evenly from one side to the next. My stabilizer bar is 1 inch. According to my torque chart, those pinch bolts on a 1 inch get torqued to 10 foot-pounds. These are 13 millimeter. I'm just going to run them down until it's snug. And I'll do the final torque. I purposely left the nuts on the bottom in case I ever need to take this out. Now I'm going to take the collars. They gave you a wrench to tighten these with. It's too small. All right, don't have the supplied hex key, but it's a number 4. Allen is what I got here. And I'm just butting it up against there and running it down snug. Gonna do the same for over here. They didn't list the torque spec for that, but don't go crazy. It's now time to remove the installation plates. Remember, everything's still at ride height. I put it all back there. Now they want us to check for clearance by raising the entire assembly up to the bump stops. If you're on the ground, you can do this with a floor jack. If I were to do this again, I might do this check before I did the welds. If you notice, this side is like dead on. It's because I didn't have to get fancy with my welds or anything. Whereas this other side, well, it's ever so slightly off. Now we've checked for clearance. I don't have an exhaust in here, and that may be something that you may have to deal with as far as clearance is concerned. I'm going to custom fit an exhaust after I'm all done. Now it's time to reinstall the rear springs, and I have a separate video on the installation of these lower control arms, which you can go into for specifics on that. But really, if you took them out, it's the opposite of the way you put them in. The one thing that you need to remember is have the pigtail, the end down here at the bottom that sits on the spring perch, have that pointing towards the back. That's about it. Now for the final part of our stabilizer bar installation, the rest of the suspension is all taken care of. This is the last thing I'm doing here. We need to assemble our end links, and they go together like this. You'll need one jam nut to go on, then the other piece. I'm just going to leave this like this for now because I'm going to want to adjust it. Now the idea is to have it so that the stabilizer bar, when it's sitting on the ground, is in a neutral position. So in other words, I'm going to put a level underneath it, and I want to make sure that it's level when I install these. And I'll make the adjustment here in order to shorten or lengthen it in order to get the size that I need. The other important takeaway is how the washers are mounted here. They give you these 4 fasteners, all the fasteners that came with the installation bracket that we put on there. You're not going to need any of that. So you can use the other supplied washers, but this is the order things will go together. So one washer around the outside that goes to there, but then, interestingly enough, it's 3 washers here. And that's both on the top and the bottom. 1 washer there. So that is significant. The other thing you want to make sure of once you get the length and everything set up is that you don't get this installed like that, sort of cocked over to one side. You want to make sure that these are both straight, dead on. Maximum Motorsports recommends that you begin your installation at the full soft setting. Remember, this is an adjustable setup, so that would be all the way in towards the frame rail. And then all the way out towards the end is full stiff, so therein lies your adjustment. So I'm going to install them on the full soft setting like they show here, and also note that they have it installed to where this upper piece is on the body. So I'm going to install these while it's on the ground, but I'm going to tighten all the fasteners when it's up in the air because it'll be easier to do that, but I just want to make sure that I get the stabilizer bar correct. Also, if you'll remember, my passenger side is set up way better than the driver's side. So I'm going to set everything up for the passenger side since that's, well, more true, more straight, if you will. And then I'll go over to the passenger side. So I'm going to base it all off of my good side. As I said, I was going to install this in the inner most part in the full soft setting. That seems happy there. And the point is at ride height, I want it in a neutral position. So I will shorten or lengthen this until the bolt hole lines up. Looks like it's lining up there. Check, see if it's level one more time. Slightly off. Should come down in the front, probably a couple of turns. Do I need to be exact here? Nah, I don't really think so. But since I can, why not? That was unfortunate. Yeah, that works just fine. Now I'll go over and attach the other side. Oh, it appears we've run out of adjustment. That's unfortunate. And I don't want to load it up, but there's no way that's going to go in. This side is level. It's going to have a little bit of a load on it, and I didn't want to do that. So I'm kind of forced to go over the other side, drop it down some, or actually lift it up some, so I can come over here and accommodate this. I don't want to fasten it down under tension. I want to fasten it down so that the bolts just go right in when it's neutral, when it's on the ground like this. I guess it's not going to be completely level when it's on the ground, but at least it won't be under tension. I'm going to move this bar up, and I don't want just a couple of threads holding this, so I'm going to thread it in just a couple more turns just to be on the safe side. I think if it's neutral on both sides, I'll be good. I just didn't want to have it under like a preload before I even got started, but now just sitting here, it'll be in neutral position. Now I go up fast on the other side. Just checking the alignment before I commit to the washers. All right, let's finish tightening torque up in the air. I want to torque these to 33 foot-pounds when I get them both run down. And you may notice, like I've already noticed, that the amount of threads here on this side is a lot less than the other side. And you may also notice that my ride height adjustment, the way I had to do it to get everything even the way it was, is a little bit off. So that's the reason that side is up higher than this side. .33 foot-pounds. Jam nut is also 14 millimeter. So how does this rear stabilizer bar actually work? Well, this axle tube can only articulate up and down like this, from side to side. But because it's now attached to the body with the stabilizer bar, it has a lot less movement to it. Now we can make those adjustments and make it soft to where it can move a lot, or we can make it stiff to where it can only move a little bit. Now you have to be careful, because if you go too stiff, that can be detrimental and cause you to lose traction. So you do need a little bit of compliance to handle well. So you're gonna need to spend some time, preferably at a track, taking some corners to figure out what setting will work best for your vehicle. And that concludes the installation of a rear stabilizer bar on my 1979 Ford Fairmont. Keep in mind that the information in this video also applies to Fox bodies, which includes Mustangs from 79 to 92. Actually, I think it'll probably go a bit beyond that, at least up through 95. So this information covers a lot of vehicles. That said, I'll also put links in the description to the other videos I did, the installation of the torque arm, also the pan hard bar, and the rear control arms and coil springs, if you're interested in that. That way you get the complete rear suspension rebuild. But I can tell you, I'm very happy with this setup as opposed to what I had. It's much more controllable, much more stable, and gosh darn it, it looks badass. Anyway, I'll also put links in the description to the parts that I used during this video. In addition, I'll put links to the instructions for the installation of all this stuff in case you missed anything. I'll also put a link in the description to EricTheCarGuy.com, which is where I ask you to go if you have automotive questions. And I close each of my videos with be safe, have fun, and stay dirty. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.